Those made it amply clear.
Hello and welcome. I'm Asima Katauka and you're watching World Report, the Africa Brief on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan has warned that violence following the disputed October election, where she claimed over 97% of the vote, has damaged the country's international image and could threaten access to crucial foreign funding, which accounts for 23% of the government revenue. Egyptian President Sisi and Russian President Vladimir Putin will join a landmark video conference ceremony today to mark the installation of the first reactor pressure vessel at the El Dabaa nuclear power plant and to sign the nuclear fuel purchase order. The event held during Egypt's 5th Nuclear Energy Day underscores deepening Egypt-Russia strategic ties. Eswatini has confirmed it received $5.1 million from the United States for accepting third country deportees under a secretive deal with the Trump administration. A pact now facing legal challenges as at least 15 people have been sent to the kingdom so far, with provisions for up to 160 people. Egypt and Germany have sealed a 294.5 million euros cooperation package comes as Egyptian Minister Rania Al-Mashad is visiting Germany. The agreement includes renewable energy, waste management and investment climate improvements, along with a 123 million euros negotiation protocol for new soft loans and technical support. Meanwhile, Egypt's National Election Security has annulled results in 19 electoral districts across 7 governorates. After identifying serious violations, the move follows President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's directive urging a thorough investigation. Zambia will host Chinese Premier Li Qiang for the first time in 28 years as the country emerges from a debt crisis. China-Zambia's largest creditor aims to deepen investment in mining, infrastructure and exports, while Zambia seeks fresh funding to grow its economy and attract international partners. US President Donald Trump says leaders from every major country will join a Gaza board of peace. The UN approved a US-backed plan to end the conflict, authorize an international force, and oversee reconstruction. Meanwhile, Hamas says it will not disarm, and references to Palestinian statehood have sparked controversy in Israel. President Trump has praised Syria's tremendous progress under President Ahmad al-Sharaa. He has also said lifting U.S. sanctions with support from Saudi Arabia and Turkey gives Syria a chance to recover and rebuild regional ties. Now we start with Nigeria. A top Nigerian general has ordered his troops to fight day and night to rescue 25 schoolgirls whose kidnapping in the northwest has been seized on by U.S. President Donald Trump's followers. The early Monday morning raid on a secondary school in Kebbi State was the latest abduction of school children in Muslim-majority northern Nigeria, more than a decade after Boko Haram's infamous kidnapping of 276 girls in the northeast sparked international uproar. It has become another flashpoint to draw the ire of the U.S. right following Trump's threats of military intervention over the alleged killings of Nigeria's Christians. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Mahesh Sachdev. He's a former Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us again, Ambassador. Good to see you. Now, what are the challenges and ethical consideration for the Nigerian military in balancing these rapid rescue operations with minimizing civilian casualties? during their anti-kidnapping missions. And what more can you tell us about this ongoing situation with Nigeria in terms of U.S. involvement?
Thank you for having me. It's a complex issue, particularly with the memories of decade-old Chibok kidnappings of 270-odd girls from a Christian hostel school in the northeastern area. At that time, it had evoked widespread international condemnation and vigils, etc. And most of these girls were eventually returned, but some of them were not. It's difficult to say who exactly has kidnapped them. This case in Kebbi State, which is also in the northwest of Nigeria, it's a Muslim majority state, and the school is a government school. So it's not, the parallels are limited, and you cannot just say that these were Christian girls. There would have been all sort of religious permutations among the number of girls that have been kidnapped. Kidnappers have not revealed themselves. There have been no claims for undertaking this act. And there could be two motives. One would be to replicate Chibok kind of situation, where religious motives of Boko Haram were much in evidence. Or it could be simple act of kidnapping for money. Let's also say here that in Nigeria, there's a pattern to kidnapping, and this kidnappings actually go up in the run-up to Christmas time, because the ransom collected then goes to celebrating Christmas, etc., etc., and buying gifts for relatives and everyone else involved in this gruesome act. It's a very cynical way of celebrating Christmas, but nothing can be said as of now as to what exactly is the motive. Even otherwise, even if it's the kidnapping was by Islamic fundamentalist militants, they too would like to cash in on approaching Christmas and create a bit of a religious connotation to the whole exercise. The added complication here is also of the United States President Donald Trump having earlier this month criticized Nigeria for allowing Christian persecution, and to which Nigerian government has reacted in a nuanced manner. It wants United States to help Nigerian armed forces to be able to act more effectively against the Boko Haram and other Islamic militants without giving them a carte blanche over sovereignty of Nigerian state. So we have a complex situation, and one should add here that Nigerian police and security agencies report to the federal government, while the administration is with the state governor, who may or may not be of the same party as the federal government and presidency are. So that also adds a layer of differentiation and mutual accusations between state government and the federal government. All told, we'll have to wait till a claim for this act is made, and then we would need to think in terms of whether government is going to negotiate with the kidnappers, pay ransom, and get them get these girls freed, or a military action would have to be warranted. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea that such history and motive were behind the kidnapping and is reoccurring, as you mentioned. Is there anything that current government is doing actively to prevent such?
Yes, I think without losing much of a time, the military hierarchy led by the Chief of Staff of Armed Forces has issued an order asking government forces to do everything under their powers to release these kidnapped girls. One should add that within last 1 month, there have been a whole revamping of the top hierarchy of the military in Nigeria. There was some alleged that it had something to do with incompetence or the coup in the making by the military. So there is a new top brass of the military who would like to show that they are more effective, more efficient in such matters. And let's see if this turns out to be correct.
Yes, thank you for sharing such meaningful and extensive knowledge on this issue, Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now moving on, Britain's Foreign Minister Yvette Cooper plans to introduce sanctions relating to human rights violations and abuses in war-torn Sudan. Stressing the need for sustained efforts for a ceasefire, Cooper also accused the international community of turning its back on Sudan for far too long. The conflict erupted in 2023 amid a power struggle between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, as known as RSF, as RSF's recent takeover of El Fasher, one of Sudan's largest cities, has raised grave concerns about mass killings. Last year, Britain imposed sanctions on 3 businesses, Al Khalij Bank, Al Fakir Advanced Works, and Red Rock Mining, which it said were funding military groups behind the Sudanese war. Let's listen into what Yvette Cooper has said.
And last Friday, the UK called a special session of the United Nations Human Rights Council, in which a UK-drafted resolution was passed securing an international consensus for an urgent UN inquiry into alleged crimes in El Fasher, because impunity cannot be the outcome of these horrifying events. We need to make sure teams can get in to investigate these atrocities and hold the perpetrators to account. And I've instructed my officials to bring forward potential sanctions relating to human rights violations and abuses in Sudan.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. He's a former Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us again. Now looking at this, how effective could these targeted sanctions be on influencing the behavior of armed groups in Sudan?
I think one can have 2 opinions about it. Firstly, there have been sanctions on various perpetrators for a long time in Sudan of these violent acts, but these sanctions have remained largely ineffective. There's International Criminal Court investigation against the past president of the country, al-Bashir himself, but that ex-president continues to be behind bars in Sudan without having been surrendered to the ICC. Britain, which was the last colonial master of Sudan, together with Egypt, has special links with that country. But one could also attribute a bit more cynical motives to the move that UK government has belatedly taken by talking about human rights in Sudan. It has something to do with asylum seekers in UK, many of whom come from war-torn Sudan, overland to Libya or Tunisia, and then by dingy boats to southern Europe, from where they try to go to UK, where there is a large Sudanese community to join them. So when UK is trying to curb the illegal immigration from France, only last week measures have been announced. This humanitarian approach and sanctions by Britain to the perpetrators of violence in Sudan, in Al-Fashir and rest of the places has something to do with that kind of tough anti-illegal immigration policy that has been adopted. It may have also something to do with the regional divide, where two of the more prominent countries of the Arab world, Saudi Arabia and Egypt, are now allied with Sudan armed forces, again fighting against RSF, which has backing of UAE and some other countries. So by seeming to be toughening its position vis-a-vis RSF for Al-Fashir massacres, the British government may be trying to sort of attract the attention of Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Qatar for various motives, including economic ones. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that deep insight on Africa Brief with us, Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. The UN's Population Agency has estimated that over 2,000 women have fled the city of El Fasher to escape the harrowing fighting. According to the reports, more than 140 pregnant women arrived at Al-Dabba camps since El Fasher's fall last month. Many of these women have arrived suffering severe complications, especially hemorrhaging, which sometimes culminate a miscarriage. Earlier this year, Doctors Without Borders said that pregnant women in Darfur undertake a harrowing journey, trekking on foot across unsafe roads to seek medical care at the few remaining healthcare facilities, which results in delivery complications, miscarriage, or even death. Last month, RSF forces rampaged through El Fasher following more than 500 days of siege. According to relief agencies and witnesses, the paramilitary group had gone house to house, killing civilians and committing sexual assaults. Now we move on to Zambia. Zambia is set to host China's Premier Li Qiang for the first time in 28 years. The country emerges from a financial crisis. China is Zambia's largest creditor. It owes $5.7 billion and wants to expand its influence in the copper-rich nation. Premier Li's visit aims to deepen trade investment and infrastructure ties, including a major railway refurbishment and mining projects. Zambia's debt, totaling $13.4 billion, is now on a more sustainable path, attracting interests from Europe and the U.S. as alternative partners. Chinese officials say the visit could result in dozens of cooperation agreements, boosting Zambia's economic growth and industrial capacity. Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us again. Now, how might Zambia's reliance on Chinese investment, how do you think it affects its political and economic sovereignty in short term and long term?
Indeed, heavily rely on China. Because Zambia is a part of copper belt, so there are many coppers, and China want to get these resources. Then the price of the copper is rising, so that's why this is more important for China, and that's why for a long time China has invested in the Zambia. So Zambia was number 3 level of the investment China invests in Africa. So that's why this is the main country. Number 1 is Angola that time, and Ethiopia the second, and the third one is Zambia. That was order China's investment in concentrated. So now the Zambia has a huge effort, and so but mainly rely on China. So that's why China try to take care of Zambia, and they try to take more copper from Zambia, as it is easy to expect. But at the same time, China's investment creates many problems in the Zambia. For example, to develop mines, there is many environmental issue has happened. So that's why indeed China's investment destroys local life. So that's why this is a problem. In some cases, local workers kill the Chinese manager of these copper factories, mines. So that's what happened in the past. But still, anyway, China is a master, and Zambia is rely on China. That is the situation they cannot change. So that's why China's visit means that this is both is coming, something like that, I think.
Right. And you already mentioned that China is benefiting from copper in this case from Zambia. What are the potential risks and benefits of China expanding its influence in Zambia and other regions in Africa through debt finance infrastructure projects?
Of course, China is dreaming to be the number 1 of the world. So that's why many areas China has expanding influence. But in case of Africa, especially as a source of the resources, source of natural resources, mines especially, so China is getting support. But recently, because of the emerging economies, so that's why these countries, there are some emerging countries in Africa. So that's why the influence towards the global south is also the topic for China. So not just taking the resources from them, but also they want to get support from the African governments. For example, in the United Nations, each country has one board, so that's why if China gets support from the 54 African countries, this is powerful. These are the image of China's influence, political influence. So not just the natural resources, the political influence that China want to get. But in this case, problem is China try to get support from the government of these countries, but China hasn't seeked any support from the local people in Africa. So that's why the government in some cases corrupted, and China exploit the corruption and expand influence inside of the government, but that is not mean the local people support China. So China is not democratic country. They do not worry about support from the local people. So that's why they do not care about it. But indeed, this is important because currently the many dictatorship has happened in Africa, or a coup has happened in Africa. But in the future, Africa will be the more democratic. In this case, they will not support China, I think. So that is the weak point of China's influence in Africa, I think.
How do you think, how should Zambia balance its relationship with China and to avoid over-dependence on a single foreign partner?
Yeah, in case of Zambia, Zambia heavily rely on China, so it is nearly impossible to change from now. So maybe even if they want to change, long run is needed. So that's why just now it is very difficult to change. But at the same time, rely on the one resource itself is a cause of problem. The Zambia should create something, the alternative source of income, that is important. Diversify the income means that they will not rely on one source of, in this case, the source of money, I want to say. So they rely on China because they rely on the one resources, which is copper. So they should develop something, the other industry, and this industry is not rely on China, but that will be the one step to diversify the economy and not rely on only China.
With that, I would like to thank Dr. Satoru Nagao for joining us today and sharing that insight on China and Zambia. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Eswatini. Eswatini has received $5.1 million from the U.S. under a deal to accept third country nationals deported by the Trump administration. The agreement signed in May in the capital, Babane, requires Eswatini to take in up to 160 deportees in exchange for U.S. funding to strengthening border and migration management. So far, at least 15 immigrants from countries including Vietnam, Cuba, Laos, Yemen, and the Philippines have been sent to Eswatini, most held in detention. Details of the deal remain largely undisclosed, and human rights lawyers have filed a lawsuit claiming the arrangement was unconstitutional. The U.S. State Department has declined to comment, but emphasized that implementing Trump-era immigration policies remains their priority. Now we move on to Tanzania. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan has warned that post-election violence could hurt the country's accession to international funding. Speaking at a swearing ceremony for her new cabinet, Hassan said the unrest has tarnished Tanzania's image and urged officials to focus on raising domestic funds. The October election has sparked 3 days of clashes after key challengers were excluded, with hundreds arrested and rights groups reporting possible fatalities. Hassan won over 97% of the vote, though African Union observers said the poll fell short of democratic standards. Calm has largely returned, and Hassan vowed to restore peace, while her new cabinet includes her daughter and son-in-law. And that's a wrap on Africa Brief. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.